Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
All right, well, David, welcome back once again. And the magic of the internet, for most people, this is a separate episode, but you and I haven't stopped talking since the episode where I interviewed you. So today, we wanted to talk a bit about motivation and how that affects authors and how that can be a problem and ways to motivate yourself. So I'm interested because you brought up the topic. What made this a topic that you'd like to discuss as it refers to new authors?
I think
and helping new
motivation is the
authors?
key to everything. Now, it sounds like I'm one of these people that think you've got to ho, ho, ho to the end of the row. I'm not like that. For me, ho, ho, ho means Santa Claus. But everything we do for a reason, and understanding why we do things.
Hello?
And the reasons that we behave and act and do certain things is of great benefit to us in all sorts of walks of life. And it's vital for an author to know why they're doing something.
You brought up the topic of talking about motivation, and I'm curious, what made you think of that as an issue for new authors, or is it something that you've struggled with in your writing?
I think it is something that is important to understand. I think it's a big topic, and it's only by understanding what motivates us, why we do things, that we can get the most out of them. And I think it's quite important that we realize what it is that motivates us, what we really want, what we're looking for, and then maybe we can get it.
And so I guess that naturally leads to the question, what are some of the things you wanted that led you to writing?
That's a great question. And as we already said, in a funny kind of way, I'm not motivated to write. I'm just not motivated to stop writing. It's something that I've always done, to tell a story, and I love to tell a story. And every night, there's stories going on and all around me. You see glimpses of stories. You see an old woman walking down the road, and you wonder what's going on there, and just the most prosaic and ordinary things. And once you start to think about these things, your mind goes into all sorts of tangents. And the reason I write is just because all of these thoughts and ideas are there, and it kind of makes them more manageable. Maybe it's just like a filing system to get all these thoughts and ideas down, and there's to share the way I think, the way I feel about things, and in some ways to get more people to understand what I'm thinking about more, and to also for me to more understand myself.
So just those types of feelings, that is what your motivation is. I think a lot of authors get, and we mentioned this a little bit, they get down on themselves a bit because they compare themselves to authors that have been around for 20 years, authors that have, 50 books out. And they're like, oh, I'm not as good as them. Oh, I'll never be that good. And I think that takes away from your desire. And you mentioned you have a job that you actually enjoy. So is writing for you your relaxation, your fun time? Is that something that helps keep you motivated doing it?
No, Fun,
Okay.
fun is important, but fun is something that is not limited to when I'm writing. Fun is something I have fun at my job. I have fun with my kids. I have fun with my wife. I have fun with my friends. I have fun when I write. Fun should be central to your existence, because if it's not fun, then it ain't fun.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. It sounds like if I ever come to Scotland, I got to look you up.
Oh yes, please do. Please do come to Scotland. Hopefully not as a
I
refugee.
right. Well, you never know anymore. My son actually is wanting to move to Ireland. He went there on a
Okay.
school trip and fell in love with it.
Yeah, it's
And
nice. It's not as nice
that's
as
where
Scotland, though.
well, some of my wife's favorite books are the like Outlander, and there's a
Oh,
few other books like it. So she would have no problem wanting to come to Scotland.
so there
Trust
you
me.
go. You can't compete with that, can you? You may as well give
Right.
up.
I just have to get my sword, and hopefully I don't get my head chopped off.
Yeah.
So something about motivation I heard recently is that we have our thinking on motivation all wrong. That people try to get motivated and then they go and do something. Whereas what the studies, I guess, are finding now is the way we're wired, that if we are doing something, it motivates us to want to do more and to do better. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that the a lot of the barriers to doing the biggest barrier to doing something is fear, and fear of looking stupid, fear of not being, if you're a writer, the fear is not, you're not Stephen King. And you talked about this, how we compare ourselves with others, and that's not unique to authors. I mean, uh, football players do it. I stopped playing football after high school because I knew I was never going to make the big league, or I stopped playing basketball because I knew I was never going to make the big league. I didn't try hard at school because the kids there were all smarter than me, or whatever. There are all these things that say, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do this." Blah blah blah. And I always tell my kids that I can do anything, and they don't believe me. Except I always caveat it. I can say I can do anything badly. And the truth of the matter is, you have to do something badly before you can do it well. Whether it's playing the ukulele, whether it's doing kung fu, whether it's doing football, whether it's doing maths, whether it's writing, whether it's sex, whether it's whatever it is, you've got to do it badly first.
And I love that and agree. Too many people think that if they can't do something the best, then it's not worth doing. And that's not true. I am never going to play basketball as well as LeBron James, but I can still go and play and enjoy it. And we talked about enjoying something,
Yeah,
making that your focus rather than being the best or something like that.
yeah. And you've done plays at basketball, I'm sure, that stick in your mind, and they are world beating moves that stick that in your pipe, but unfortunately there was no camera to capture it.
Yeah. And sometimes, and I really think if we relax and enjoy things, we do much better at them. And then it goes back to the same thing. If you're doing something and you're doing good at it, you want to do better, and there's your motivation to go do it. I'm not saying that simple philosophy will get you on the basketball court as a pro, but
But it'll
you can
get you on the
still enjoy it.
basketball court. Yeah.
And you'll do better. I've noticed that, and especially with writing, I've noticed a lot of people get really uptight, and they've had 4 5 years that they've been working on one book, and it's still not out, and they're not done, and they're worried about it, and then they get all upset because, oh, I haven't written anything for 3 days, you know, and what we just said. You look at him, it's like, well, you don't seem to be enjoying this. Why are you doing it?
Yeah, seen it. Yeah, seen it. Yeah, seen it. And to be honest, I'm spoiler alert, I'm not young anymore. Um, I've done the same thing. I've written books when I was 18. The first book I wrote, I was probably 18 when I wrote it, and it was a spy movie, and I showed it to my friend, and his response was, just what the world needs, another effing spy novel. And, so what did I do with it? I stuck it in the drawer. Who knows? Who cares? It was 60,000 words that were put in an order that would made them at least readable and meant something. That was an achievement. That was a huge achievement.
Yeah.
At 18, wow. And I'm really impressed by myself. When I see Ted, I'm going to punch him for saying that. But this happens to us all the time. People say, "Oh, if you look at people that are successful, they ain't that great."
Right. Well, yeah.
I used to play soccer, and we call it football,
right?
Because it's a ball and you use your feet.
Yes. Americans have to screw everything up. We screwed your guys. We screwed the English language up. We screw up the sports.
No. We've done plenty of that ourselves. And hey, I'm not sure that I'm. English isn't really that's a sore point for a Scotsman.
I was going to say,
they say we screw it up, but
we've got the enemy of your enemy thing going on here.
But I've played football with people that have gone on to have, in some cases, international careers, and let me tell you, they weren't that great. They might have been better than me most of the time, but not all of the time. And there's times when I've made them look stupid just as they've made me look stupid. And there's moments when I can look at this football and say, yeah, I had you. And there are for all sorts of things, there are physical and emotional attributes that you need to be at the top. And if you don't have them, you don't have them. But it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. I remember playing football in Norway, and we were playing with a lot of Americans. And one of the boys there they were sort of 18, 19-year-old boys, and I was quite a bit older. And like I say, I'm a good soccer player. I could have been a contender. And this boy he came from Alaska. I remember his name, and he was. He almost died at birth. He wasn't quite a cripple, but he was not athletic. And, he ran about the park and all the rest of it. And he got the ball just outside of the goal area. That's the white box, in case you don't know. And I was playing the holding midfield, or midfield general. And I sort of backed off because, go on, son, shoot, because I was fairly confident he was going to miss from that distance. But he hit it sweet as a nut, and it flew into the top corner. And that's something that boy's never going to forget. And nothing can take that away from him. And all of us have those moments where we have successes, when things just come together and go right. And nobody can take them away from us, because they're there and they're real. And, that goal was as good as a goal as plenty of the goals that I scored or people that I saw in playing professional score. That, and he's probably not playing football at the moment, but that was a real thing that happened to him. He scored this goal from not quite the halfway line, but pretty far out.
And that's a great example too, because like you said, I don't know the guy, but he obviously had some challenges in life with his physicality, yet he was out on the field playing. And so you got to wonder what's his motivation to do that, because he's not going to be the top scorer. He's not going to be the fastest down the field. So did he do it to prove a point that I can do it? Was he doing it just because he enjoyed it? Those are definitely reasons people get motivated to do something. I would say you almost look at it. One's almost using the dark side, to prove a point, and the other is using the light side, but they both achieved the same goal. They motivated him to get on the field and start running.
Well, I think part of it was really just the fact that it was a communal activity that we all do together. And, writing, you might think that it's just sitting in your room typing away on your laptop, but actually it's not. And if that's all you ever do, then you've missed out.
Right. Agreed. People, and I guess I'm kind of with you. I don't understand so much when people go, "Oh, I got to get motivated to write." Well, if you're having to psych yourself up every day to sit in the chair, maybe this isn't the best choice for you. I usually don't. I usually wake up and I'm like, oh man, I only got 1,200 words yesterday. I've got to sit down because I've got all these great things going, and I
Yeah.
want to sit down and type.
There's days I've written 5,000 words, and there's plenty of days when I've written nothing. And
Yes.
I'm not. The days that I've written nothing doesn't mean that I haven't been doing things, because as you see, what was it we write? We talked about all these things that are actually inside us that we want to tell, and all the rest of it. And those things are things like the relationship you've built with your kids, and what's behind that, the relationship with your partners, your relationship with your school kids, the relationships with your parents, the beauty of nature. There's all of these things that you don't get sitting in front of your laptop. So if you're out there having a good time, when I grew up, when I was writing as a teenager, my friend Ted, the one that didn't like he liked my science fiction story, but didn't like my detective story. He really encouraged me to take drugs because he felt this would expand my mind and I would understand things and it would open doors and blah, blah, blah. Spoiler alert, I never took them. And I don't regret that, but I kind of understand where he's coming from, except that's not really I don't really want to write about being a junkie because I don't want to be a junkie. Sorry about that prerogative word about people that are unfortunate enough to be in that situation. I do want to write about them as people and to express love for them and care for them, but I don't want to write about the experience of being one because I don't want to be one.
Right. I agree. And if personally, if you have to do drugs to get yourself motivated to
Well,
do anything, I question whether that's the best choice anyway.
bigger writers than Ted have had that approach.
Right. That's
You can
very
think of
true.
Edgar Rice Burroughs and Hunter E. Thompson, and there's plenty of people have thought that. I don't know, maybe for them it's right and maybe it works, but looking at their life in the round, I would have said not. But then who am I to judge?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you mentioned Stephen King earlier. He very openly has said he did lots of drugs back in the older days, and people would argue that his better books are in that time period. So I guess maybe that tells you something.
Well, what are his better books?
Do what?
What are his better books? I mean, that's something.
Well,
I don't think there's. I don't think there's uniformity about that. I mean, I guess people.
that's true.
I guess people who are thinking along these lines are probably thinking that some of the sort of more esoteric stuff, the Dark Tower and things like that. Are those his best books? Is the Dark Tower a better book than the Green Mile? I don't know. Maybe it is.
I think that's definitely probably opinion each person too for
Yeah.
any writer.
I was always under the impression that Stephen King didn't agree with that particular narrative.
Right.
That he didn't feel that his best books
Yeah.
were the
He
ones written
said,
under drugs. Maybe he did.
I know when I read King, and I've read a lot of King, I definitely can get to a point where it's overkill, that I just can't read anymore because I feel like my brains are oozing out my
Well,
ear.
again, I mean, I used to read all these books when I was a teenager: Plague Dogs, The Fog, The Tommyknockers, all this, and I kind of found that at some point he'd obviously lost the joy of writing, and that every book I read was kind of the same. A very good book, but I kind of read, The Fog and The Plague and all the Rats. It was kind of the same structure to all of the stories, with just different bits plugged in.
Right. Yeah, a friend and I kind of joke sometimes that you could easily create a Stephen King generator. You just have a bunch of dice that
You
have
probably
character
could.
attributes, settings, and an idea. And then you just roll the dice and pick them up, and there you wrote a Stephen King story. But who
Yeah.
are we to judge? We're not multimillionaires, so.
No, he's laughing all the and you.
So,
Having said that, he's a great writer.
yeah, I've learned through the years that King was one of the earliest writers I read. And I've learned through the years to appreciate what he's good at and ignore the things that he's not quite as good at. But he's still one of my favorite authors to read. And I guess,
if you
we
read
were
a
talking
Stephen
about
King
motivation.
for the novel for the first time and you'd
I
never
guess
read any
wanting,
of his other books, you'd think he was the greatest writer you've ever read. I'm quite sure of it.
right. And for me,
Because
I love
we get
King.
bored of things that we see a lot of.
Right. We do. I was
We
using
love
him,
novelty.
I guess you could say, using Stephen King, wanting to be like Stephen King is good motivation. We were talking about motivating yourself. For me, a lot of times I'll read a little bit of King and then I'll want to sit down and write. Okay. So, we had a few internet glitches there. But David, to finish up our talk on motivation, what would you say your advice then would be for new authors to get themselves motivated or to stay motivated, or any last thoughts on motivation itself?
I think it would be to enjoy yourself, to have fun, to be, to just enjoy it, go with it. Writing should be a pleasure, and don't make it a chore. Make it a pleasure, and think about the things that made you happy when you read, and try and recapture that as you write. There's other advice you can give. Be generous with your time. Be generous with other people. Be generous with your comments about other people's work. That but ultimately, it's all about being fun. Don't take it so serious. That seems a strange thing to say, but seriously, don't. We have an expression: "What's for you won't go by you," and I think that's true. If you're going to be, there's going to be something comes to you as a result of you being a writer. There's going to be people that read your book, no matter who you are or what you've written, that they're going to love. You see, when you look on Amazon and you read a book and you think, how did this book get 5-star reviews? And it's because somebody loved it. You might not have loved it, but somebody did. And I don't think there are many books on Amazon that don't have at least one 5-star review. And they're not fake.
Right.
They're not fake. Somebody really liked that book.
And I think that's good advice. Just start writing and write and enjoy it, because if you're writing and enjoy it, it'll come through and you'll have much more success that way. And it'll go right back to what we said. If you're writing, enjoying it, and you're having success, that's going to motivate you to write some more. So it's, maybe we need to change our thinking that, not trying to motivate ourselves to write, but maybe we have to write to motivate ourselves.
Yeah, maybe indeed. And we just need to remember that You know, there are a million books out there, more, and that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your book and your story, and you tell it your way. And you know, if that leads you to a £1 million advance with Random House, great. If it leads you to self-publishing and selling a few copies on Amazon, that's good too. It's all good.
Yeah. All right.
Life
Well,
is
David,
good.
it's been a really good conversation with you today. And I wish you luck on your book.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed your company, Stephen, and I'm looking forward to listening to this podcast and to listening to your wise words again and thinking about your very stimulating and intelligent conversation. And I think you gave me a lot of things to think about that I'll certainly take on board.
Great. I appreciate that. Thanks, David.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.